Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this Town of Lincoln Council meeting of July the 11th, 2022 to order and ask that everyone stand in the chambers for the national anthem. Thank you.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. I would like to begin this evening by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors, and obey all the instructions given. And if assistance is required, please see the clerk, Julie Kirklos. Once you've evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Please ensure you place your cell phones on silent and or turned off. Thank you, council members and staff. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Niagara Region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Attawandaronk and Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Not as a recital, but as an opening to share with you projects that support calls to action outlined in the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation. I make a reference to culture of the Indigenous people by speaking of the interpretive park that our staff and council have been working with them. The presence of a sacred grounds where there are artifacts such as the Longhouse foundational poles, also a burial ground, and the recognition of missing Indigenous women and children through the celebration of the Red Redress Day. More recently, in regard to the alleyway behind the Fleming Center, where there are several pieces of art that were created by the youth of the Six Nations, some of whom live in Lincoln and in West Niagara. And there's also a new stone sculpture, a beautiful turtle, and I haven't seen the commemorative information on it, but I understand that that there will be a commemorative plaque there, and it's also located under the sails at the Fleming Branch Library. It is my pleasure to note the involvement of the town with our Indigenous people and nations that surround us and are involved with us in Lincoln. Do members have any announcements? I see none. We have no proclamations this evening. And we have no recognition and achievements. We're now considering, just one moment, please. I seem to have missed something at the bottom of the previous page. Item number 5. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Reimer? Councillor Reimer?
Thank you, Mayor Easton. I'll declare interest this evening on item 16.1, bylaw 2022-47. The applicant is a customer of the company I work for.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Mary.
Councillor. And Madam Clerk advises me, Councillor Benjima, you have a reiteration. Please go ahead.
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. And my reiteration is of the declaration that under item 12.1, the minutes of the Committee of the Whole of June 29th, because I am in the employment of a person or body that has a pecuniary interest in the matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, councillors, we'll go on now to item number 9.1, which is the council minutes of June 20th, 2022. Do members of council have any questions? I see none. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Mikulik that council approve the minutes of the following meetings of council, special council minutes of June 20th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties over here, so we're going to do a hands up, those in support. And I see all hands up in the chambers. Councillor Regima and Councillor Pachariva, you are also in support with your hands up remotely. Thank you, so that carries.
Thank you. Item 10 is delegations and presentations. We have no delegations or presentations this evening. Item 11, items for consideration. We have one item for consideration this evening, being item 1.8 from the Council Information Package week ending June 24th, 2022, from the City of Niagara Falls regarding on-demand surety bonds policy. Councillor Pachariva, you can hear me?
I can, Your Worship.
Thank you. You requested this item be lifted for discussion. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was just, inquiring to staff if this is something we're seeing more and more of and how it might fit with our municipality. Just curious if this is, kind of taking over. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on it right now.
Letters of credit.
I want to say like lines of credit instead. So
Yes, letters of
I don't know if it's Mr. CAO letters of credit or Director Wagner. So
Okay.
just
all right.
curious if this is a new policy
Okay.
and if it expedites things.
All right, I'm going to go to Mr. Kirkopoulos first. I had received a contact from a company from the West. It could have been last year ago this time, so these companies are out there. Mr. Kirkopoulos, would you like to report on any follow-up with any companies? And then we'll go to Mr. Wagner.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I'm going to let Director Wagner maybe speak to this first, and I think, explain a little bit of it from a technical standpoint. And then I can speak a little bit to what we're seeing in the industry, or at least what I'm hearing from some of my peers. This was a recent topic that was discussed amongst CAOs, and so we are seeing more and more of it. But I'll let Director Wagner speak to this first.
Okay, Director Wagner, are you there?
I am, Your Worship, and through Your Worship to Councillor Pachariva. Generally, letters of credit are taken out, or facility taken out through banks, and they secure the monies, and you can make a claim if something goes deficient with a project. They're really easy to access. There's usually no waiting period. Depending on the terms and conditions of the LOC, you can make payment on demand and the like. The challenge with surety bonds is the way they're currently written, it goes through an insurance party. You have to make a claim. Then there's a question of period of time before an investigation's done and before you actually can get made whole of any monies owed to you. We had internal discussions, myself, Mike, and Matt, in regards to this, and there has been some questions from some of the builders and such, looking at maybe ways to free up cash. In order to do that, we talked about different types of controls, and it's similar to Niagara Falls, in that if you were to entertain this or do this to protect the town's interests, you would have to essentially include some provisions for the town that protects their interests in regards to making a claim, so that you would have the ability to make a claim without an investigation process. So that speeds up the ability to collect. And you also have to include a term or condition in relation to dispute process. So you remove those two provisions. You add one that you can make the claim directly without a formal investigative process, and you actually include the one to remove the dispute process, and you have it gets very similar to an LOC. But I definitely think before we do this, and I know we've done one in the past, if we were to do this formally, we would consult with legal to ensure that the town's interests are protected. So I do think they're viable. I do think they're something we should consider. It kind of does a partnership between the town and the builders so that they don't tie up cash, because a lot of times what they're looking at when they have a letter of credit, it shows up as a debt or an obligation or liability. And that kind of sometimes restricts them from doing other things. So if we put the appropriate controls and mechanisms in place, I think it would be a viable option for us to consider here at the town on a regular basis. And further, it can also be an economic development tool in regards that we could target these or only allow these for certain types of builds or certain types of projects, whether it be affordable housing or the like. And it's something that we don't necessarily have to outlay cash to incentivize people. So I know Mike probably has a lot more to offer, but in my 2 minutes or less, that's my summary.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wagner. Mr. CEO?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think, Lawrence really, I think, has spoken to a couple of the items that we have been speaking up internally. We have done it in the past for a particular builder, a well-known builder that does a lot of work in Jordan, without getting into too much detail. So it's not new or not foreign to the municipality. There are protections in place. And so again, it is something that I think most municipalities are looking at. Surety bonds are already in place on the infrastructure side of life. That's already happening through IO and a lot of the various work that is going on. So we are hearing about it. I know the Niagara Home Builders Association is also petitioning municipalities. Again, something we will look into, I think, as we move forward. It is one of those items that we have in our toolkit that we don't have to use all the time, but that is available for municipalities. And we have done it in the past. Shortly after I began with the town of Lincoln, it was something we entertained, as I said, with a well-known builder in Jordan that was looking to do a small development. So something we'll look into. I know both directors, Dale and Bruder, have spoken with legal and are looking into this. And as I said, in a lot of ways, the security that is provided, as Mr. Wagner highlighted, if it is backed by an insurance company, it does protect the municipality. So definitely we'll be looking at what my colleagues are doing in Niagara Falls and otherwise. Hamilton, Burlington, a number of other municipalities either have one in place already in terms of a policy or proceeding with one as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pachariva, anything further?
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right. Do members have any questions? Councillor Benet?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate Councillor Pachariva pulling this off the correspondence, and I appreciate Director Wagner's comments. I can certainly understand why the development community would be pushing for this. Certainly understand that, to keep it off their balance sheet security and give them greater credit availability. I certainly would hope that through you, Madam Mayor, that Mr. Wagner would do a complete cost-benefit analysis to make sure that there is no cost to the municipality. Letters of credit, as Mr. Wagner indicated, work very quickly, work very well. They are secured by the bank. Certainly in my previous life, we had to use the ability to receive money from companies that were in default or had gone bankrupt with performance bonds and labor and material bonds, and quite often they can become very arduous, and they can become very lengthy. So certainly look at opportunities. I can see large municipalities, City of Toronto, London, Ottawa, looking at this. I'm not sure whether the town of Lincoln has an upside, but certainly all for looking at ways of doing things better. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We also have Councillor Mikulik. If I can press this hard enough, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Easton, through you to our Director of Finance. So, interesting way of allocating money or securing funds or necessary funds should they be required. But question I have is, you mentioned insurance as being a guarantor of this form of credit. Who pays the premiums for that insurance? Is it the municipality or the developer?
Mr. Wagner?
Through your worship to Councillor Mikulik, it's all on the developer. So the developer would have to pass a gate. So like any insurance, so I do it akin to your health insurance. The insurer looks at your credit worthiness, looks at your ability to pay, look at the premiums, look at the risk on their potential of, potential default and collect. They would charge them the premium. Our requirements on our side to protect us, to mitigate the risk, as Councillor Brunet said, would be to ensure that we have right to submit a claim without having to go through that long protracted process as some surety bonds are. So our requirement would require them to ensure that we have the rights to make claim without any formal documentation, similar to the LOC. We can make claim against it and collect on it immediately. You would do the same provision. You would also try to mitigate the dispute process or the time that Councillor Brunet talked about by eliminating the rights or entitlements of the person being insured to dispute the process as well. Because that's where it gets, those two parts make it dicey and can actually extend the period and essentially increase the risk. If you want to get it similar to an LOC, you add those two terms or conditions to any agreement that the town enters in with the outside entity and ensure that their insurance agent has the same requirements or conditions, and we should be relatively protected. And I would agree with Councillor Brunet. LOC is probably the easiest way to go. It's the money's on hand, the company's got the money, but this is another way that you can be in partnership with a company or a developer with no cash outlay from us. The risk would become down as if the surety bond doesn't include those two provisions that I talked to. And again, we would consult with legal to make sure that we're fully protected on that regards.
Thank you very much. I do agree with that letters of credit, that's immediate money that can be drawn upon immediately. And I think it promotes a better working relationship between the town and the developer in terms of expediting the process or the development and ensuring its integrity. I can only comment to insurance companies, in my experience with insurance companies at a personal and business level, that it takes time to make a claim, submit a claim, prove a claim, and then receive a claim. So that's the experience I have, but looking forward to further investigating this and whether or not this is worthwhile, something that the town of Lincoln should look into.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I don't see any other questions. And Mr. Wagner, your hand is up. Did you have a little more you wanted to add?
Yes, yes, Your Worship, to Councillor Mikulik. And then one of the things, as I say, is on presentation, similar to an LOC, we would include the terms of provision that on presentation from the town, that an event of default or some other transaction has happened, we would issue that. But that it would be in the formal agreement signed by the insurance agent, the developer, and the town would be party of it. So that type of provision would be very similar to an LOC. If we don't have that type of provision, then we get into that long, lengthy process where it goes through investigation, and the insurance company looks at you and goes, well, we're not sure if they fully defaulted or not faulted, and you end up going 6 months, and then you incur your own costs for potentially legal challenges and such. So Those two provisions I keep highlighting are very key to make this very similar or like an LOC.
Anything further? Thank you very much, Mr. Wagner. Thank you, CAO Kirkopoulos. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor Reimer that council receive and file for information the following item. Correspondence from the City of Niagara Falls regarding on-demand surety bonds policy. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open. Councillor Rajima, I will ask for your vote.
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pachariva,
In favor, Julie.
thank you. And I'll close that vote, and that carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The vote is carried. We're now at item 12, recommendations from standing committees, and we are considering the following. Committee of the Whole minutes of June 29th, 2022, and Committee of the Whole minutes of July 4th, 2022. Do members of council have any questions? Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With respect to 12.2 minutes and recommendations, item 7.23 regarding the electric vehicle chargers, I just would like it to be noted that I was against that.
Okay, what, Councillor, just for the record, so that we know, is that June 29th? That would have been
12.2,
July 4th, right?
July 4th.
Okay. All right, and I don't recall us having a recorded vote. However, you're asking that the clerk make note that you voted against it?
Correct.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please take those instructions.
That's noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other questions. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet and seconded by Councillor McPherson that council approve the following recommendations from standing committee. Committee of the Whole minutes of June 29th, 2022 as amended, and Committee of the Whole minutes of July 4th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open. Councillor Rajima, are you in favor?
In favor, yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm closing the vote, and that carries.
The next item on the agenda is notice of motion, and we do not have any this evening. Item 14 is report of municipal officers. The first item on the agenda, is item 14.1, Bill 13, Delegated Authority to Pass Minor Bylaws, PD 33-22. The Director of Special Projects will provide some introductory remarks. Ms. Dale, would you please go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the report that's before you tonight it's for information. It's going to be subject to future public meeting and at some point a final report. Recently, the province did approve Bill 13. So what that does is that it provides the authority for the municipality to delegate approval of minor zoning amendments. And really the purpose of that is to speed up the approval process. Its purpose really is to delegate things that are more routine, things that are technical, so that council can focus on, policy issues and much more larger complex applications. The other thing to keep in mind, where these types of applications are required to have a public meeting under the Planning Act, that public meeting, like the applications will still go through the same processes as previously. There's still a public meeting required to be held by committee and council. It's just that in the end, instead of a final report coming back, what would happen is staff would issue an approval similar to a notice of passing that's done after a bylaw is approved by council. In order to enact these types of provisions, it's necessary for the town to amend its official plan because you have to have some policy direction to allow you to do so. If we look at page 2, there's already a number of functions that are already delegated to staff. So just to give you an example, I think it's about 5 years ago, it might be a bit longer. Consents were delegated to staff so that what the Committee of Adjustment does is it only considers applications where there's adverse comments that have been received. We found this process has worked well, and what happens then is the Committee of Adjustment is dealing with the applications where issues are raised. However, the difference between the two processes is that in this case, the Committee of the Whole and Council still have to hold the statutory public meeting. So some of the examples that we're suggesting in the staff report are things like temporary uses and extensions to those when they expire. So the most common one that we're seeing is garden suites. Of all of the garden suite applications that have been processed through council that I can recall, there's been maybe some minor tweaking to the approvals, but none of them have ever been refused by council. And I think this is because with things like garden suites, we have an aging population. It allows people to live closer to their family members. So that's really the purpose of those types of things. Other types of temporary uses are quite uncommon because when you get into the specialty agricultural area, for example, it has to be ag related. So you really can't, there's not a lot of temporary uses that you would see as far as in an agriculture area. The removal of a holding provision, all of the conditions for establishing a holding provision are established by the original bylaw that approved the zoning for the property. And then what staff have to do then is before removing the holding provision is just ensure that all of those conditions have been met. Probably one that staff would really consider very minor is we do have on occasion, there's applications that are approved for a consent or a severance. And the applicant, maybe because of the lot size or the existing zoning, they need to change the zoning, say from an R1 zone to an R2 zone based on their lot frontage or something like that. I mean, those applications have already gone through the Committee of Adjustment. I don't recall a situation where any of those have ever been refused. The other thing that we're also suggesting, and this comes out of some of the work that the Provincial Housing Task Force was working on. They haven't implemented this yet. We're looking at zoning amendments for market rental and affordable housing. This would be subject to conditions that a certain percentage be affordable. They have to agree to long-term affordability. And we're looking at developments that are smaller in scale. So this would be a total of 50 units or less. Larger developments, such as condominium ownership or a mixed-use proposal, those would still have to go through a public process because those would be, those are much more complex applications. So really, overall, this is similar to some of the other delegations that have been provided over the years to staff. I mean, the planning staff still have to do their due diligence in regards to policies, take into account comments received, but it will reduce overall the amount of reports for more routine application. So what that does is it frees up some time in doing reports and also considering those reports at committee. And it also allows the committee and council to focus on the more complex application. So basically, Madam Mayor, that's the end of my comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dale. And councillors, this report is receive and file for information. However, I would ask if anyone has any questions to the report. I see none. Councillor Njima, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes.
Thank you.
So the delegation of additional planning matters does not alter any notice or public meeting requirements. So there still will be a public meeting for all zoning bylaw amendments. So I'm trying to figure out how this would happen. Would it take place during a council meeting? And how would council participate if it's not to be the ultimate decision maker? Sorry. Phone's ringing. So how would council, what would council's role be? Sorry, I can't shut my phone off. If I touch it, I'll answer it.
Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor. So in regards to various zoning applications, there's a requirement to do a circulation to your judicial agencies. You have to schedule a public meeting. Council would also have to hold that public meeting, hear the comments, much like what staff also will have to hear all of those comments. So then instead of staff doing a report with a final recommendation, say approving the application, instead what staff would do is staff would approve the bylaw, issue the notice, but with all of other similar applications where there is a delegation by staff, such as I'm going to use the example of consents. The consent decisions are provided in the weekly council agenda packages. Same with the notices of public meeting for the consents. So there would still be an onus on staff to make sure council is aware of any decisions made by staff.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to figure out how it would, I mean, the public meeting would happen and council would just kind of sit and listen. Or would we play a sort of facilitatory role, also ask questions and on behalf of our people in the community that we think they might have questions? Is that what our role would be? Because usually, when we have a public meeting, we do that, but it's not our decision, but we do that with the assumption and knowing that it's going to be our decision eventually. So is that going to be our role? Would we be there to bring forward the concerns and questions of people in the community?
So through you, Madam Mayor, the public meeting would be pretty much the same as what you're doing now. You're going to receive comments from the public, bring forward those comments, and for the benefit of staff, so that when staff issue a decision, that they're also aware of what all the concerns are, so that the decision addresses all of those issues. I mean, staff are still going to have to address all of those issues. So the public meeting will be very, very similar to what's happening today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Okay. I do have another question, Madam Mayor, but I'll wait if I see the CAO has a hand up. So if it's...
We'll have him make any clarifications on your first question. Go ahead, CAO Kokopoulos.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, and I had a brief conversation upon returning today with another member of council on a different topic where we talked about council's role and council's ability to ask questions. So to Councillor Njima's specific question on being able to ask questions on behalf of constituents, I would say, Councillor, that is always your role. Whether there is a delegated authority to staff or otherwise, I think advocating, seeking clarification, getting information on the table so that it is clear and it is understood is your responsibility, and it is something that you will continue to do. I think, on this topic, maybe to add a little bit to what Kathleen is saying, streamlining approvals and making it easier to do with business with municipalities is something that the province is really pushing. The province is bringing, and I think this provincial government and this premier have wanted to bring a private sector approach to municipalities when it looks at how to streamline processes. Some agree with it, some don't. It is part of what the province is titling, and I will loosely put it in quotes, their ability to make it easier to build homes. So whether that's garden suites or holding provisions. At the end of the day, the province is asking for this. We're seeing where they're going, and we're trying to adapt but at the same time, keep our residents first and foremost in our minds. So I'll echo the comment I made to another member of council earlier today on a different topic. Always ask the question whether there's delegated authority or not.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead with your second question, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, so the staff report says that staff proposed delegating authority for zoning bylaw amendments that facilitate market and affordable rental housing and meet the following requirements. A minimum of 20% of the housing units are attainable rental or affordable rental units. A minimum period of 20 years to remain as attainable rental or affordable rental to align with Niagara Region's eligibility requirements for affordable housing, and the planning application shall comprise a total of 50 dwelling units or less. So my apologies if you did already clarify this, Kathleen, but does this mean that regardless of the type of rezoning required to facilitate the entire development, and I mean not just the 25% that meets the attainable or affordable rental criteria, the decision to approve or refuse would be delegated to staff? Or would this just be if there were site-specific rezoning required for that portion of the development?
So through you, Madam Mayor, so the intent is that of the 50 dwelling units, 25% of those would have to be affordable housing. So it would be because you can't, you have to rezone the entire property. So the intent is there is a real desperate need for rental and affordable rental units in the town. If you look at some of our core housing needs, and really the purpose of this is if we do get a small development that is proposing some affordable housing units, subject to these conditions, this will help speed it through the process a little bit.
Yeah, I understand the intent. Okay, so this report is for is a recommendation, or sorry, just an information report, and should there be decisions that we have to make, that'll be in the future. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. And I have Councillor McPherson. Please go ahead, Councillor. Whoops. I turned it off. Okay.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Madam Mayor. And through you to Kathleen. So, when I read through this, I certainly see where the province is coming from in many municipalities. In that, hearing what we have heard about, the planning process in other municipalities, it can be very slow. And I wonder, how applicable this is to us. Many times I'm hearing that our approval processes are outstanding, that we are moving through, these applications very quickly. And, I guess I just get uneasy in taking council out of the process of setting any kind of bylaws, that, we always see applications that are not perfectly aligned with the bylaw. There's always a deviation. There's always asking for a little bit more here or there. And, to have those just be decided by staff, I think there's a miss in there. I think there is a responsibility for council to be making that final decision and for that responsibility to lay with council. So I guess from a question standpoint, I can't see Kathleen, but there she is. Do we have any issue with moving planning applications through in a timely manner?
Ms. Dale?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the other thing also to keep in mind is the province is wanting to be a bit punitive as well, in that if you don't meet those minimum timeframes, you may be required to refund a portion of the applications. So for the most part, I think, you know, the timeframes are met, but there are situations where they're not met, even with some of the straightforward applications. Just because of, you know, the timing of when they submit the application and getting it on for a public meeting, you know, and doing the staff report, issuing a decision. So the intent is these are intended for what I would call much more straightforward application, not an application that needs a whole bunch of changes to its zoning provisions. Because if you look at the categories, we've got, you know, temporary use. So you look at a garden suite, that's allowing a second unit on the property for 20 years. Lifting the holding symbol, you've already dealt with the issues when you've had the previous public meeting. A decision of the Committee of Adjustment, those are pretty straightforward. And the only one that's maybe a little bit more complex is to create, you know, some rental affordable housing. But I think that really is a priority for the province. And we're just looking at ways to try and facilitate, to encourage and support affordable housing as well. So I think if you look at it, some of the more complex applications, those ones will still go to council for a decision. These are ones that we as staff see as fairly straightforward. They always get approved, and we're just trying to reduce the time frame a little bit so that we can guarantee that we're going to meet those minimum timeframes.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I guess I would challenge that, Kathleen, in they're always approved. You know, they may eventually get approved, but there are tweaks that are done many times to send it back to the developer or send it back to the owner. You know, we've only just started down the road of the garden suites, and you know, we had a pretty intense review of garden suites and just released a bylaw around it a couple of months ago. So I think it's in our best interests to continue seeing those come forward and for the foreseeable future, if you want to get specific about garden suites. So I guess, you know, when I look at the report, I don't see an administrative burden in making decisions as being part of council. You know, I don't see that burden now. I appreciate these you know, temporary bylaws coming forward to renew again. We ask questions around them. You know, I can think of the hoop houses down on 9th and asking questions about why we extending, you know, that type of thing. So I see this as remaining as part of council's decision. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I think we have some clarification potentially from the CEO. Mr. Kirkopoulos, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I don't know if it's as much clarification as it is a comment, and I would agree with the councillor. While we are quick, I think what the province is doing is really applying a broad stroke to this councillor, and I think you're absolutely right. Whether it be the previous term under your leadership or this term under Councillor Mikulik and Brune's leadership with planning and development, we've made it one of the tenets of how we do business is to look at these things and to process them quickly and to make decisions. And I think the staff that you have in planning and development are always bringing forward reports that allow council to do that. I would say that, you know, council will be made aware, and I think we need to get better and do more in terms of informing council if we go in this direction. But I'll go back to the province is applying a broad stroke to this. The report and legislation, though, I will say this for council. Right now, the province is strongly encouraging and asking municipalities to do this with a firm hand. They may direct us very soon, but the report and legislation that they're putting forward right now does say that council, should you identify problems once you've instituted this process and once you've instituted delegated authority, can pull this delegated authority back. So that is a piece I think that's important to add. And I think another piece that we should look at is, what is the backlash from the province if we don't do this? I can tell you this is a topic around the CAO table, not just here regionally, but much more broadly around the broader GTHA. So we will keep council informed. This is an information report. I think good comments, good questions from council tonight. And I think some of that will find its way back into our report back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirkopoulos. Satisfied for the moment? Thank you very much, Councillor. And I turn to Councillor Timmers. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Just in reviewing this report, I personally don't have a problem with this at all. I think this is a good move. We have very good planning staff who are professionals and they know what they're doing. And I feel this is they are very minor in nature. I've always wondered why removal of holding symbols need to come to council. Why do we need to have a report and staff have to prepare that report for something that's so minor? Councillor McPherson brought up the hoop houses. And last term of council, I couldn't understand why the hoop houses had to keep coming before council for major discussion for a simple extension of a temporary use. So to me, I feel that when you look at the chart, when we look at the chart of what's being added that's already there, to me, they are very minor in nature and it makes sense. And we need to trust our planning staff, and moving forward, it can be looked at again, or if there's an issue, as our CAO just said, it can be removed. But, we're looking at 400, 500, sometimes almost 600-page agendas. And, this is just another burden on staff to prepare these reports for something so minor that they are very capable of making the decision on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I turn now then to Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much, Mayor Easton. I believe our CAO has his hand up if he wants to. Oh,
I apologize, I haven't taken it down yet, Councillor.
okay, not a problem. Thank you. Through you to Kathleen Dale. This is a pretty new initiative, this Bill 13. Any members of council come forward requesting this sort of removal of authority or delegating this sort of authority? Myself personally, I don't find it overwhelming to be included in these sorts of applications or decisions.
Is your question to the CAO?
CAO or?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kirkopoulos, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think to answer the councillor's question specifically, have any members of council come forward seeking one way or another staff to bring information back on this particular topic? No, not either in favor or against, particularly on this topic. I think it's one of those things that as the task force that the Premier set up starts to talk about their recommendations and make them known and look to implement more of those recommendations. And we're hearing a lot of things as of right zoning, other things that council will have read. Right now, these are recommendations that they're giving to municipalities, and really what your planning staff and the senior leadership team is doing is being proactive. We're sharing this information with council. We're going through the right processes. Some municipalities have already beat us to it and are already moving in this direction. Others are not yet, and watching what a few do. So really, it's a matter of timing. I would suggest with this provincial government, it's a matter of when, not if. And so I think to answer your question specifically, Councillor, is anyone beating down planning or my door to say, bring this forward or don't bring it forward? No, but that's typically not how we do things. Early in my tenure, I said to a member of council who's not on council anymore, we will bring things forward to council that we think are correct and I think are the right thing to do. And then council will make a decision. So no, nobody's beating down our door one way or another, Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. The reason why I ask that is, certain planning applications, I like to be included, or I like to know what's going on. I take, for example, a recent Committee of Adjustment item, where there was an apartment building with a request for a 1.4 meter setback where 9 meters was supposed to be there. And then even with our new zoning bylaw, it would be 3 meters, but 1.4 was still considered to be minor. And I'm having a hard time with not knowing about these sorts of applications unless it seems I find out about them through residents within the community. And not just one or two, but a number of residents that email either myself or in our ward, Councillor McPherson, with regards to these sorts of minor variances. Once upon a time, I believe minor variances were things like air conditioners and things of this sort of nature, but with these sort of planning applications to construct large additions with various setbacks, reliefs and setbacks, I personally would like to know about that, directly. So those are my comments with that. And if I may, just one more comment with regards to whether we would find out, like, if there was an application for a 49 unit affordable housing building, theoretically, this could move forward without council knowing. Is this correct? Am I correct with that assumption?
Ms. Dale? You're on mute, Kathleen.
Sorry about that. So through you, Madam Mayor, as I mentioned previously, these zoning amendment applications still have to go through a public meeting process. So council will be aware of the application because they will have to participate in the public meeting part of it. In regards to the Committee of Adjustment notices of public meeting, I believe those are circulated in the council agenda packages each week. So I know the planning staff are trying to make sure that council is informed of other types of applications by using the weekly agenda packages.
Councillor?
Again, I appreciate that, the council agenda or the council information package, but I feel like when I see it in an agenda for a meeting, I pay closer attention to that. And as far as the public notice with Committee of Adjustment, I believe is it 150 meters within that property receives notice?
Ms. Dale, can you clarify that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So depends on whether it's a minor variance or a consent. So generally speaking, it's, in most cases, if it's a consent application, it's 60 meters, which is 200 feet. If it's a minor variance, it's 30 meters or roughly 100 feet. There's also a requirement to put a public notice sign on the property as well.
Councillor?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm turning now to Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Just a question regarding, just following up a little bit on the lines of Councillor McPherson's comments. And this is by no way a reflection of our staff. Staff has always been open to comments and questions and 11th hour discussions on all of our projects. Should this be implemented, and I realize that the province is probably making our mind up for us, is there a trigger mechanism we would have as council, building on that some of us are in the community quite a bit, and they're complex moving applications. Is there a mechanism by which we could ask for it to come to council, or is it strictly, does it come, sort of all or nothing type of thing, through to Mayor, through to staff, to Director Dale, or to Mr. CAO?
Go ahead, Director Dale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the intent is these would be for a minor application, but there's always the option, let's say on something that is a minor application, that there are issues that come up, and it can always be, staff can also say in this one we're going to take the decision through council. So staff can always have that option of moving it back up to council.
Does that
And
answer
just
your
follow up,
question?
Mayor Easton?
Yes. go
So I
ahead.
understand that, Director Dale, but does council have is there a mechanism by which we can ask for something to come to council?
If I could, Madam Mayor, maybe I'll chime in here and Director Dale can correct me if I'm wrong or add anything I have. Councilor, most of these things, aside from Committee of Adjustment, and we can have a separate conversation on Committee of Adjustment. And if council is not seeing things in your council information package and want us to bring attention to it, I know Director Gianni is working on something that will be interactive for our website. But I think on Speak Up Lincoln, we'll have all of these particular applications on there that you can just hover over. Again, I recall, and I understand what council's saying. You get information packages, you get a lot of information. So on Committee of Adjustment, I think that's a separate conversation. I would suggest on all of these things, they're still coming before council. They're still coming before council at the process of a public meeting. You'll still be made aware of them. I think what the suggestion is, for example, on a holding provision being removed, or garden suites, which is generating maybe a little bit more of the conversation. It's the final decision, not the input, not the preamble, not the public meeting that is being eliminated, but I think the decision, the final decision, once all of those feedback mechanisms are exhausted. Again, I think if we hear a lot of comments and council is reticent about going in this particular direction, then that's something that we'll take under consideration when we bring back a report. And I think, council then, has a decision to make when we do bring back that particular report. So I would say you're still going to see a lot of the things, if not everything, that you're currently seeing. I think the suggestion is the final decision gets delegated to staff as per where the provincial legislation is going. Of course, there's everything, if clerks tracks council's requests, we can bring them. You can always ask to see things. We are as transparent as we can be. And if we need to be more transparent, I think bring more forward. And there's things that generate more discussion. But this really is, I'll emphasize, the routine things that I think planning staff are looking at having delegated, not the things that we all know can and will be contentious.
Counselor?
Thank you, Ms. Theo. Thank you, Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much. I see Counselor Renchima, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to make a little bit of comment about the discussion about the Committee of Adjustment. I mean, what we're talking right now in this report is about things that we should delegate to staff, not necessarily, I mean, the discussion's gotten a little broader, but not necessarily, what should we be pulling before us that we want to see more of. But when we talk about the Committee of Adjustment, I just want to make a note. Maybe this is something that Kathleen wants to speak to or somebody else can speak to since it was brought up. But the Committee of Adjustment is a legislated body. It's there. And the reason we have it there is it's supposed to be, these decisions are supposed to be dealt with arm's length from council. So we are really supposed to kind of stay out of those decisions. So just we keep that in mind. We review them, we get the applications, we consider them and in our minds, but the decision is made by the Committee of Adjustment. So that's a comment that I had. And then I also have a question about Committee of Adjustment.
Wait a minute, Counselor. We're not talking about Committee of Adjustment. And we're not talking about sending things or not sending things to Committee of Adjustment. So I would ask that we not start going down that road. This is enough of an issue on its own.
Okay, Madam Mayor, there is discussion in the report about Committee of Adjustment, zoning bylaw amendments, which are required to implement a decision of the Committee of Adjustment. That's what my question is going to be about.
All right, I want you to stay very close to that because as you've just said, this is not something that is part of our purview. Although it's interesting and there are many issues that we'd like to be involved in, this is not one of them. So I'll leave that to you to focus. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the report, it says one of the things that we're proposing to delegate to staff are zoning bylaw amendments, which are required to implement a decision of the Committee of Adjustment. So for example, consent applications that require a rezoning of lands to agricultural purposes only. So that makes sense to me. That if the consent, the severance went to the Committee of Adjustment, and then in order to facilitate that severance, a rezoning to agricultural purposes only is required. So that makes sense to me that that's, one of those things that, as Councillor Timbers was mentioning earlier, why does it need to come to us? I think it's pretty clear. But my question is, are there any other required rezonings that are tied to a Committee of Adjustment application that might be delegated to staff? Or do we always require that zoning come first and then it be tied to the Committee of Adjustment application? So, okay, let me make that more clear. If there's a severance application that requires a rezoning other than an agricultural purposes only, are we proposing that that be decided by staff also?
Okay, Kathleen, Ms. Dale, we talked about that earlier today. Yeah, and I know you have the answer. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So another example, and I tried to talk about this a little bit, is sometimes somebody will do a consent application, and let's say their lot frontage or lot area doesn't have the proper zoning on it. So maybe, right now it's zoned in a residential R1 zone that requires a certain amount of lot frontage and lot area, but they want to create a lot that's a little bit smaller and it needs to be rezoned to a residential R2 zone. So that's an example of one that, the Committee of Adjustments already said the consent is appropriate, but before you can finalize your consent, you have to amend the zoning on your property. So the zoning is implementing the Committee of Adjustment decision. It wouldn't be a situation where somebody creates a lot, but there's going to be further, more complex planning approvals, such as a change in, I don't know, height or something like that, and they want to build a condominium apartment building on it, for example, and change some of those provisions. The consent does not need to rely on the zoning. Those types of zonings would still go through its normal process. It's really the ones that are specifically implementing the creation of that particular lot or lots.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And I believe I'm just going to ask Madam Clerk to provide a bit of information on the publication of
Thank you.
information from the Committee of Adjustment. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify a couple of comments that were brought up throughout the discussion. So, Councillor Miklick, I know you raised the fact that, you're not aware of the Committee of Adjustment agendas or the information going forth. So it's not only included in the council information packages every Friday. Those agendas and minutes are actually on our webpage. So if you go to agendas and minutes, that you find our normal committee and council agendas, Committee of Adjustment agendas and minutes are also included there as well. So council can see those at any time. They are published in a timely manner, just as we do our other agendas and minutes. And as council knows, Council of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body that processes applications under Section 45 of the Planning Act. So they do have a requirement to comply with certain criteria, and they are structured to do so. So I just wanted to provide that reminder to council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I also see Mr. Deanne's hand up, and I'm assuming it's on Councillor Ranjima's question. Is that correct, Mr. Deanne?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I actually wanted to build off Madam Mayor, thank you. And I wanted to build off the clerk's comments and potentially add a little bit of a commentary around what the CEO said around new mapping software. So we're currently working with IT and some of our partners on the Information Steering Technology Committee to bring about a new mapping software called Esri. And Esri will allow us to integrate our Speak Up Lincoln page to provide on-site mapping and information to our residents in the community about ongoing development in Lincoln. So no timelines yet in terms of when we can bring this on. Unfortunately, Esri is a complex software tool that unfortunately we just can't flick a switch. It does require some building of maps and data behind the scenes. So we're definitely working on that project. And once we do bring it on forward, I'm confident that our residents will be well informed in terms of the development that's happening in our community. Knowing that development and information has been an ongoing concern and how much we can share with our residents, we have built out the Speak Up Lincoln page and development in Lincoln. And what I'm suggesting, just hearing this great conversation tonight, perhaps maybe we could link to some of the Committee of Adjustment agenda items that the clerk was just referring to on our Speak Up Lincoln page to make sure that our residents will have an easy click to find some of this information. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I now have Council McPherson for the second time with new information, correct?
New question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm just thinking through the process and thinking, I guess, more in the case of an applicant being denied their application, if we take this approach and we have staff making the decisions, if an applicant is denied their application, where do they go? What do they do?
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Kathleen, probably.
Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Dale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to answer the councillor's question, the process at the end would be the same as if council had refused the application or approved the application. Staff still have to issue a notice of decision, and there will be an appeal mechanism. So if a particular applicant does not agree with the staff's decision, they can appeal that decision. Much like if an applicant doesn't agree with a council decision, they can appeal that decision. So the end process is the same. The only difference is council versus staff issuing the decision.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just for clarity, so there's no other method of appeal, bringing it back through a counselor, having it go through our own little appeal process. This is pushing the applicant to the OLT.
Is that
on
correct,
a
Madam
minor decision. Is that what we're doing?
Is that correct, Ms. Dale?
So maybe, Madam Mayor, to clarify the councillor's question, as I noted previously, these are applications that are straightforward. I see that as being a very, very rare occurrence. And if it's a situation where the staffer said, "I'm sorry, but your application does not comply with policy, we can't support it," there's always the option to move that decision back up to council and then council can make the decision. So there's always that option. I just don't see that happening because we're looking at trying to delegate what I would call very minor applications, ones that always tend to get approval.
Okay.
Councillor, thank you.
Thank you.
And now Councillor Mikulik with new information.
Yeah, new information. I just want to also clarify that I do read those council correspondence. It's along with all the other reports, and I don't read all of the agendas on the calendar. This is why things are delegated. The question I have that's new is when can we expect this report to come back for a vote or for a decision?
Okay.
What's the timing of this?
All right, thanks for that question. And Mr. CAO, I'm going to turn to you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll look to staff to correct me. I'd be, I think September would be optimistic in terms of just where we're at and in terms of the timelines and having public consultation. But I know in conversations with the clerk and planning staff, as well as Mr. Deanne, I think, we're looking at our calendar and we're looking at this being an election year and where we sit with council. So if not September, then you're looking at something post-election. But I'll look to either Kathleen or Julie maybe to provide some clarification.
All right, does anybody have any contrary information to the CAO? Madam Clerk, are you going to be contrary to the CAO? All right, please go ahead.
Not contrary, but I do want to say that there is a timing aspect to this, so for circulation and public hearing, and so I think there was some anticipation of bringing it forward in September.
Okay, Counselor?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Reimer, would you please take the chair? Just have some comments and also a question. The first comment that I would make is that this process, and so Mr. CAO, this is just directed to you. I see the any clerical function, any timing function, any informing function that will be required in order for this to be successful. For example, if we wanted to have a report, if we didn't just want to have it rolled into the weekly correspondence, and we wanted a report, at least until we're comfortable with it and understand what's coming through. If we ask to have that every month or every 2 months, do we have the modernization within our system to allow us to produce a frequent report with the details that councillors have brought up here this evening?
Well, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, to the Mayor. Absolutely. We are absolutely able to provide that information for council on whatever interval that is possible.
Okay, and another question, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I do apologize. I saw some chuckles there. I mixed up my deputy mayors. I was looking at Councilor Bergima, but should have been looking at Councilor Reimer. So my apologies, Deputy Mayor Reimer.
My next question is around criteria. So we've already approved criteria for the unopened road allowances. And how easy would it be for us to develop criteria for any area, that any piece of decision that would be recommended to be delegated? Is that a possibility? Because I can tell you that in my experience, Mr. CAO, that once we approved the criteria for the unopened road allowances, a few things happened. First of all, there was objectivity applied to the process that did not exist before. Secondly, there were no delays, and and it was fair. We weren't expecting some people who have a lot of money to pay more than those who don't have so much money. The property was evaluated, and that's what people paid, and everybody pays on the same basis. So anything, I think, that creates that puts that kind of criteria in place, that's welcome as far as I'm concerned in terms of improving the process. But is it possible to develop criteria in advance so that we have a very, very clear understanding of what the, what those guidelines are going to be for staff that they'll use? Is that possible?
So through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the Mayor and her particular question, the heat must have gotten to me down south. Madam Mayor, I would say that it's the legislation that's currently in place, whether that be the town's official plan, whether it be the town zoning bylaw, or any other statutes and policies that we have that dictate how any of these applications and what the criteria would be used to make the appropriate decisions. I think what is slightly different in the example that you mentioned about road allowances is that is very subjective in its decision-making in terms of when we set an internal policy at how we would look at particular road allowances, whether they are adjoining existing trails, whether they are going to a water course of sorts. Those were policies and things that were put in place by council that you deemed fair and appropriate, and gave us the guidance to make decisions. The guidance we have on a lot of these things really is both provincial, regional, and local bylaw that council's already set for us. I think, should we go in this direction, what we can do is at the beginning of this process, and maybe it's next term, and we incorporate this into some of just the general information sharing with council, is share with members of council all of those policies and statutes in a very simple way that guides some of that decision making, whether it be what happens with consents, whether it be what happens with the various other documents we have in place and how we use those to make particular decisions. But I would say, to answer your question specifically, maybe it's providing a summary for council on the decisions or the lens with which we make those decisions and the criteria and policies that are currently in place to do so.
Okay, well, that's very helpful, and I'd like to refer to Figure 1 in the document, Mr. Deputy Mayor, because I would like a little bit of clarification, so I'll direct this to you, Kathleen. Thank you very much, Mr. CAO. And I'd like to look at the green area where it says upper tier municipality official plan and then lower tier municipality official plan. So should I read from that, should I interpret from that the upper tier municipality is delegating to the lower tier municipality what is in the regional official plan, and then, of course, we would have our own official plan. Is that a correct interpretation of that drawing? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. So in regards to the diagram, I think what it's trying to illustrate is at the very top, you've got all the provincial policies, statutes, then you got the provincial plans, then you've got in our case, we've got 2 levels of official plans. So any recommendation or decision that staff makes has to comply with all of the provincial requirements. We have to take into account the policies of the regional plan as well as our local official plan, because our local official plan has to conform to the regional plan. So it's almost like a hierarchy. So when we get down to the town's official plan, it has to comply with all of the upper tier policies, and any decisions that are made, it has to also comply with all of those policies, whether it's a decision made by council or a decision made by staff.
So when I look at the purple section, is there anything that isn't, of the items that are brought forward tonight, is there anything not in there? There's the zoning bylaw in there. I can't read this very well. So the items that we're talking about tonight, are they all in there under the Planning Act land use controls?
So Madam Mayor, I think what they've tried to focus this diagram on are things like zoning and site plan approval. There's also minor variances, but minor variances are sort of, when you legislatively, they relate a lot to zoning bylaws. So I would say when you look at this list, there's zoning bylaws, holding bylaws, development permit system, which is what the Niagara Escarpment Commission uses, interim control bylaws, you've got part lot. And then with subdivisions, condominiums, there's the related part lot control, consents, validation of title, and then you've got site plan control. So when I look at, I think that's blue, it sort of looks blue, it sort of looks purple. Yeah, those are all of the local land use planning controls that the municipality has, in our case, have jurisdiction over.
Okay, so I'm assuming, I don't know this for sure, but this was put in here to inform us that there's a hierarchy to the decision-making. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so somewhere along the line, well, I know somewhere along the line where it says upper tier municipality official plan, there's already a delegation that's going on from the region right down through the processes, similar processes at the municipal level. So there's a lot of checks and balances in this.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I was reading that correctly. And thank you very much for answering the questions. And if some of those comments, the comments that we've all made tonight can be feathered into the next report, I think that would be very helpful. And even some of the examples that were given tonight in response to the questions, that's always helpful as well. Thank you very much,
You have the chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Welcome.
Okay, all right, well, we've had a pretty good discussion about this. So this is item 14 again, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Petrieva. Receive and file for information report PD-33-22 regarding delegated authority to pass minor bylaws as authorized by recent changes to the Planning Act by Bill 13, and that this report and draft official plan amendments to implement changes made by Bill 13, Supporting People and Businesses Act 2021, to the Planning Act be circulated for public review in advance of the public meeting to be held at a future date. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
And the vote is now open. Councillor Rajima, I will ask if you are in favor or opposed.
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Timmers?
Sorry, I'm in favor.
Thank you.
I just lost connection.
That's okay. And I will be closing the vote. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The vote is carried. We move on now to the next item, which is the mayor's report. And as I have been in the last couple of meetings, I'm going to just provide you some information on the activities that have been going on across the town that members of council and myself have attended. On June the 21st, we attended, a number of us attended the opening of the Bartlett Road Industrial Mall, and we have talked about that before. It is officially opened, and you'll start to see people, manufacturing enterprises moving in, as well as the gym that's on the corner of Green Lane and Bartlett Road. From the 21st to the 23rd was the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Basin Annual General Meeting, and there were a number of mayors and councillors from the Niagara region that attended, and a great deal of discussion on matters related to the soil erosion in particular, and also the watershed areas in this area. Prior mayor, the previous mayor of Toronto, David Miller, spoke, and he certainly had, I think, one of the best speeches that I've ever heard him make, and always, I think, very informative individual to listen to. We opened we had the grand opening of the alleyway behind Fleming, and a number, I believe that Councillor McPherson was there, and Councillor Mikulik and Councillor Petrieva attended. And it's, you can't miss it. You can either see it from Main Street if you're going by Court Holdings. It's just before you pass Court Holdings, but it's right behind the parking lot at the Fleming Center. And as I said earlier, you'll find a beautiful collection of Indigenous art on the fences, as well as that were done by Six Nations youth, and also this brand new sculpture that we have that's situated behind the, just outside the museum, or the library. Just really outstanding. Great work by the BIA, Councillor McPherson and his colleagues, the CAO of the BIA. Just outstanding work on their behalf. The pathway is more like a magic carpet. I just can't think of any other way to describe it. It's just something out of this world, and a great addition to town. I've heard all kinds of wonderful comments about it. On the 25th was the Lincoln Lions Soapbox Derby. Well attended, and congratulations to Cole Fielding, who's on his way to Akron, Ohio. So Great job, Cole. And the museum event, Art Lives Here, was held at the Lincoln Museum and Cultural Center, the home of the Jordan Historical Museum of the 20, and there were a number of special sites around town. It was certainly it was really lots of fun. There was some wonderful art to be seen. I think this is going to really grow exponentially. On the 27th, Councillor Njima and I attended the Niagara Geopark Investigative Day, and maybe later Councillor Njima will talk about it if there's anything more to report, but I just want to tell you that I think that Lincoln made a really outstanding presentation. I want to thank Councillor Njima for her work on this project, and as I said, I think she'll probably have more to report. But we're certainly hoping that this area, that Niagara is going to receive Geopark designation. On the 28th, a number of us attended the Niagara Climate Change Summit at Brock University. And based on policy that the Town of Lincoln Council had already signed off on with our action plan, climate action plan, I signed the climate commitment on behalf of council. On the 29th, I attended the tunnel tour in Niagara Falls, the power station experience. If anybody wants to find a really exciting thing to do during the summer, that's absolutely outstanding and unique, and certainly Niagara all over again, that is the one. It is really outstanding. I made the check presentation for Mayor Easton's golf tournament and shared proceeds with the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, the Niagara Community Foundation, and a list of those in our community that certainly do the lion's share of looking after those in need, and that would be Community Care of West Niagara, Village of Hope, Cosmos for Youth, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Rose Cottage Volunteers, Jillian's Place, and the Cave Springs Center. So I was very happy to contribute a little over $15,000 to those groups, and we've already had letters back about the benefits that are being felt. I believe there's already 3 youth that have been removed from the wait list for Big Brothers Big Sisters. They have a technique that they can use to just they can just turn that just like that. You give them a dime and they will find a place to put it. So I think that's a very good sign. On the 30th, there were discussions on lodging houses. There was also a discussion that I had with Mayor DeCero and the consultants that were developing the strategic directions for the grape growers of Ontario. That was very, very informative and worthwhile. So thanks, Lord Mayor DeCero, for participating with me. And also, last Thursday evening, there was further discussion at both the Development Charges Audit Committee and then later at the Regional Council meeting on the development charges for churches. So we'll see where the final decision on that one goes, but it was supported by the Audit Committee that evening. And there were a number of delegations by the churches in Niagara that made their way to speak to committee and to council. On July 1st, almost all of us, and many staff attended Canada Day. It was a great day, great weather, great music, and wonderfully planned. So thanks very much to all the staff that were involved. I think Laurie Laird is the big kahuna on this one, as she is most times, and it was just really well attended. It was just great. On July 2nd, I attended an open house at INN in the Orchard, which is a new B&B in Jordan Station. It was really outstanding. Quite a picture as you drove down the driveway with absolutely the biggest cherry trees bowing to the ground. There was just so much fruit on them. And then in the background, rows of beautiful Niagara peaches. So these are more for people coming into the area to enjoy. On July 5th, I attended a discussion with a number of mayors and other in the community that that are concerned about healthcare in Niagara. And I'm very pleased that these conversations are continuing. It was sponsored by the Greater Niagara General Hospital and really related to their way of getting a large and very broad brushed approach of public opinion on the future of healthcare in Niagara. And I'm very pleased and thank Lynn Guerrero, the CAO, for her ability to make certain that, that there is an open dialogue. Although our services in West Niagara are provided by Hamilton Health Sciences, I am a firm believer that all communities in Niagara need to keep their eyes on whoever is providing health care and what their plans are, so that we can be certain that the right services are in the right place for the right community, and that there are no disappointments along the way, and no decisions being made that we don't know about well in advance. On July the 6th, we raised the flag here for the Canada Summer Games, and both Deputy Mayor Reimer and Councillor McPherson attended, and we put up the flag for Labrador and Newfoundland, as they will be the province that we're going to be hosting for a great party here, and also, and it was great. It was a fun picture, no question about it. Also, that afternoon, I attended a coaching session for a Niagara candidate for the municipal election, and I hope that anybody that's asked won't turn down a candidate, or at least spend time with them to tell them what it's all about to be part of a municipal council. And there's certainly many candidates all over the province, so, or all over the region, so lots to choose from. You don't need to be, you don't need to worry about working in your own community, and that's what I'm doing, and I'm finding it very fascinating. It's great to talk to these people, hear what their priorities are. On July the 7th, the Niagara Region Advisory Council meeting was attended by mayors and community and not-for-profit leaders. And this was our second discussion with the leadership at Torstar about, and also Indigenous leaders were there as well. And we were having a discussion with Torstar about the quality of print media in the Niagara region. And I know these conversations are going to continue on. If anybody happens to have any thoughts about that and they want me to pass them on, I will certainly do that, or give you the name of the Torstar contacts. This past weekend, Deputy Mayor Reimer and I attended the 40th anniversary of the Sunrise Greenhouses. It was really quite a delightful afternoon, and there was great music by, I'm just going to think about his name right now. Oh yes, Mike Lynch. Great Western music, right up your alley, Councillor Njima. It was just great, and there were 17 countries represented in the employees of Sunrise Nursery, and they have a very, very skilled workforce there and doing a lot of specialized propagating. They also are bringing in, they have quite a number of people that are coming in from the Ukraine that have special skills, and it's just wonderful to see the relief that they're bringing to those families. So that's my report, and I thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is Regional Councillor Foster's report. He's not able to attend this evening. And Madam Clerk, I'm just going to check with you. Was there a report at all? No. Tomorrow is committee day at the region. It was today and tomorrow. So there will be much more for Councillor Foster to report when he comes next. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer and seconded by Councillor Njima The council receive and file as information the following: mayor's report, and we've already dealt with the staff report. So the mayor's report, Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thank you, and the vote is now open. Councillor Ajima, are you in favor or opposed?
I'm in favor, thank you.
Thank you. And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're now on to item 15, which is a motion to consider confidential matters, and we have no confidential matters this evening. Item 16, motion to approve bylaws. We have 3 bylaws for consideration today, and we will be considering bylaw 2022-47 separately due to the declared conflict by Councillor Reimer. Councillor Reimer is leaving the table. Do members have any question on bylaw 2022-47? And I see Councillor Brunet. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a couple things. I'm not sure about other councillors. I haven't really spoken to anyone else, but I struggle every time we have this on the agenda when we have a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement. And a lot of the things we've talked about this evening, the comment that Councillor Rinjum made way back about council's role, and Mr. CAO jumped in, and I appreciate the CAO's comments where he says, as council, we should always ask the question. We have an obligation and we should ask questions. So through you, Madam Mayor, earlier today I did reach out to staff as well as the CAO. So that is the counselor that Mr. CAO was referring to. I had reached out earlier today just to try to get some information on this. And I did speak to our Director of Special Projects, Madam Mayor, and she was very helpful. And, you know, one of the things that she reminded me of is that as council, we're approving the authorization of this bylaw. And that staff, that the site plan applications are reviewed by staff based on the land uses prohibited in that particular area. And that is a great reminder, and I appreciate that from the Director of Special Projects. Where I struggle, Madam Mayor, and I will get to a question here, where I struggle with this is what our role is. And, you know, quite often staff, council has asked staff for as much information as we can get. And I appreciate the maps so that at least I know it's at the intersection of this street and that street, it's in Beamsville, it's in Vineland. But I really struggle, Madam Mayor, as a councillor, when we're dealing with an application that I find out potentially is 800,000 square feet of greenhouse. 800,000 square feet, a considerable amount. And I know nothing about it. I know nothing about the application. I know nothing about the use. So I did ask a bunch of questions, Madam Mayor. I appreciate staff's comments coming back. And one of the things through you, Madam Mayor, is I asked the question, if there's any concern at all that under this greenhouse there is any opportunity for any cannabis. So through you, Madam Mayor, I'm wondering if either the CAO or the Director of Special Projects could speak to that question.
Absolutely. Mr. CAO, are you prepared to answer this question, or are you expecting Ms. Dale to answer it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can definitely answer the question, and if I miss anything, Ms. Dale can chime in. We did answer this question earlier for Councillor Brunet, and at the time, the councillor and I did speak, and he thought it important to ask this question in a public format so that residents, you know, can hear the answer. And the same answer that we gave the councillor, that there is no risk for cannabis on this particular site because cannabis requires much more stringent setbacks than this property would allow. And I think that did give the councillor some level of comfort, because I think that's an important question. And I think, as I said earlier today, and as I said to the councillor, it is important to ask these questions, whether or not something like site plan like this is delegated to staff, because I think residents want to understand and know what's happening. And I think we'd all be remiss if we didn't ask the question and something was to happen on this site and a year or two later we thought, why didn't we have this conversation in a public forum? So, you know, I think we put the councilor's mind at ease definitely on this particular property, that cannabis would not be something we would see on this particular property as a result of, as I mentioned, the setbacks that would be required. But again, I think, you know, to go to my previous comments on things like this, we can provide additional information and make sure that should there be questions either before or during committee, that we're providing those answers. But I want to assure council and anybody listening this evening, cannabis will not be at that particular site.
Okay. Is that satisfactory, that question?
It is, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the CEO, you know, making it public for our residents so that they can hear that, because the question will come up. One of us will get a phone call when they see something happening on that site, the same as we get phone call when we see grapes being pulled out, et cetera, or help houses being installed or garden suites going up. We will get the calls. So to me, it's about being informed. And through you, Madam Mayor, if I could just ask one other question related to this, to either our CEO or to staff. And again, this isn't about not being respectful of staff or not trusting staff. It's got nothing to do with that. I just think that any time that we get something like this, that any amount of information that we can get that helps us make better informed decisions, and I understand. I reiterate, you know, going back to what the director said, that our responsibility is basically just to, you know, to approve the authorizing of the bylaws, but I'm not about just rubber stamping something with blind faith. So,
Right.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could ask that question, to just a reminder, if there's any information that we can be given when we look at some of these things through staff that makes our job easier as council, it would be appreciated.
Okay. Is that, you've heard that, Mr. CAO?
I have, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I have, and I think, you know, in the past, we had provided some memos that shared some information like that. I will definitely take that away. We will discuss it at our SMT meeting this Wednesday. And if there is additional information that needs to be added, absolutely we can.
And Mr. CAO, just tagging on to the councillor's question, as we pass the motion regarding the delegated, the delegations, in this case, the land has the correct zoning.
Correct.
And therefore, it wouldn't normally come up for a discussion. Did it require any kind of a public meeting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Kathleen can correct me if I'm wrong, but it did not. And that is why we're moving directly to site plan on these two particular files. It does have the appropriate land use designations. And so we are moving forward. It just requires a confirming bylaw, which is what we're doing this evening.
Yes.
These are agricultural properties, which are going to remain, for all intents and purposes, within the agricultural use that is allowed on those properties.
Okay, and then in keeping with the question, as part of the question that the councillor asked, could we expect then, if there is an information mechanism that's developed by the town, as has been described by Mr. Deanne this evening, would this be the kind of thing that would be included in that public, in that information to the public?
Through you, Madam Mayor, or to you, Madam Mayor, I suspect we'd have to take that back. There's existing land use on this site that allows agriculture. In some ways, there is a changing of hands that is occurring and some changes, for example, to do some farm help houses on the one particular property. And so I would suggest that I don't think it's something we couldn't do, but I don't know the technical limitations of ESRI and how we would do that. So my simple answer is probably yes, we can. I just don't know the mechanism on how do we do that. So let's take that away. We'll investigate it.
All right, and I have a question from Councillor Mikulik. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to planning staff. Like in looking at a Google map view of this property. Was there any, do we know what sort of trees there are on this property or how large this forest is? Was there any concern about this aspect of this development or this application?
So, Madam Mayor, through you to the councillor, I think that's a question we would have to pose to planning staff and get an answer to you. I don't have that readily available.
Thank you. It's just a question I ask, just, you know, we're concerned about trees and whether or not planning staff is, you know, working with the agriculture community to try to protect the trees as well, because if it is a large forest with worthwhile trees, they're going to be gone, and you know, it'll be a greenhouse. So that's the concern I have. Thank you.
Councillor Mikulik, it's my understanding that Ms. Dale, would you clarify the limitations or the lack of limitation on farms, on agriculture for the cutting down of trees?
So, Madam Mayor, I don't have that bylaw directly in front of me, so I don't want to quote it incorrectly. But there are, you know, the tree bylaw does have some provisions regarding tree removal. As well, with these types of application, there's also some consultation with the Conservation Authority. And in some cases, you know, there's setbacks that get imposed as part of site plan approval from, you know, like if there is a tree strand that maybe has some sort of environmental significance. There's also a possibility that the Conservation Authority may have asked for a setback from the limit of that area. It really, it's just, I just don't have the specific details of the application.
Okay. So,
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I could add there, I think Kathleen's right. I think neither of us want to quote the tree bylaw in particular, but I do recall receiving numerous delegations from our agricultural community, and I don't believe the tree bylaw applies to agricultural properties, but we can confirm that for members of council.
yeah, I think that would be worthwhile. Okay, Councillor Mikulik, thank you. All right. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Njima. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is on Sand Road. Director Graham and I have been out there at least once. I think it was a couple of years ago. We met with a resident from Sarah Lane, I believe it was. And I've heard also sort of continuously, and I think we all have, about the drainage issues that flowing across Sand Road to the homes on the east side of Sand Road. And we've talked about how part of the problem is probably the tracks and CN maintaining the tracks and the brush and cleaning it up. Part of it is just kind of the way the water flows down those northerly along Sand Road. And doesn't really have anywhere to sort of absorb and disappear. And so there are times, and I'm going to say potentially even a couple of times a year, where Sand Road floods. I don't know if that's gotten any better, but I haven't heard that it has, and I've heard about it continuously over the last few years. So I'm wondering, during the site plan process, is there anything any kind of questions that we ask about potential development in the area that considers stormwater management and potentially making the situation better?
Okay, thank you for that question. Mr. Graham is here. Are you looking for a Public Works answer? Are you looking for a response from Ms. Dale?
I maybe Ms. Dale. I think probably the site plan process, any kind of maybe technical studies that are required.
Okay.
For the process. Thank you.
If necessary, Ms. Harris is is here as well. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to answer the councillor's question, with any site plan approval, application, regardless of what it's for. One of the things that the development engineering staff have to consider is, when you take a piece of raw land and you put a building on it, there will be drainage impacts. So there is detailed grading, in many cases, stormwater management plans that will have to be prepared to support the application to show that what they're doing on the site won't impact anybody on the adjacent properties. Mr. Graham can probably provide more details in regards to existing conditions. We can't ask an applicant to fix an existing condition. However, we can ask them to address the drainage, to control the drainage on their site so it does not make it any worse. But I would defer to Mr. Graham to address the issue regarding road drainage in the area.
All right. Councillor Njima, shall I go to Director Graham?
I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Graham.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So the Town of Lincoln Public Works Department, we've been doing a lot of improvements over the last couple of years on our roadside ditches on both John Street and Sand Road to improve drainage. We are also working with CN in terms of doing drainage improvements along the CN tracks. There was some work done this past spring with some brush removal to assist with that works, but we are working with CN to try and get them to continue with improvements along their CN right-of-way. And it is a floodplain in that area as well. And as Kathleen noted, with any developments in this area, we definitely look at ensuring they have a stormwater management report, and they aren't going to make any drainage conditions worse or worsen any conditions that may exist out there.
Okay, so I appreciate that. And I understand that because you and I have spoken about that in the past, Dave, and you really explained it to me well, that the site, whatever development on site can't make conditions worse. And I know it's an ongoing struggle to deal with the drainage issues in that area. So I guess that's my question. I just want to ask on behalf of the residents, when they see development start there, that it's not going to make things worse. And I appreciate being able to ask that question.
Mr. Graham, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, I don't, Madam Mayor.
Not at this time. Okay. Councillor Njima, is that satisfactory for now? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that leave be given to approve the following bylaw, 2022-47. Bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln, Majestic Agriculture, Inc., together with any and all mortgagees that may be on title at the point of registration of the agreement. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
The vote is now open. Councillor Bergima, are you in favor or opposed?
In favor, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Brunet? Thank you so much. And I'm closing the vote. And that carries. Thank you.
All right, the motion is carried. I'd just make a comment at the end of this because I don't want us to get too far removed from it. We've had quite a bit of discussion tonight around, changes. We have the Planning Act. We have some changes to the Planning Act that are being put forward by the province. There is certainly a lot of pressure being put on councils around coming from other non-governmental organizations, what I would classify as political expediency. And then there's the local political needs around serving the public and being informed. And it's clear that, we're struggling with these. And So I'm hoping that through the discussions that we've had this evening, that we'll be able, and the staff report coming back, that some of these matters can be addressed, and that we'll be able to have productive actions going forward. And I want to thank everyone for expressing themselves this evening. I'm now looking at 3 additional bylaws. 22, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Rinjima, that leave be given to approve the following bylaws: 2022-48, bylaw to amend Schedule D of bylaw 2017-24 as amended, being a bylaw to establish an administrative penalty system respecting the stopping, standing, or parking of vehicles in the town of Lincoln. Bylaw 2022-49, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln, Rodantia Holdings, Inc., together with any and all mortgagees that may be on title at the point of registration of the agreement. 2022-50, a comprehensive zoning bylaw to regulate the use of land and the character, location, and use of buildings and structures in the town of Lincoln. I will now ask the clerk to open the vote. Madam Clerk?
And the vote is now open. Councillor Rinjima, are you in favor or opposed?
In favor, Madam Clerk, thank you.
Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. The vote is carried. Item number 17 is a motion to confirm proceedings of council. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor Brunet that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 22-51, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held Monday, July the 11th, 2022, being read a first, second, and third time. That a bylaw number 2022-51 be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Sorry, I'm just trying to open up this. And the vote is now open. Councillor Rinjima, are you in favor or opposed?
In favor, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, can you vote, please?
Oh. Sorry.
That's okay, thank you. Closing the vote. And that carries.
Very good. Just a moment. Yes, I see that. That motion was carried, and we're moving on now to announcements. And I see that Councillor Rinjima has an announcement. Is that still the case, Councillor?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you.
You're on. Go ahead.
So thank you. I wanted to update council on the Geopark initiative. In my last update, I would have shared with you that the local group is working toward having the Niagara Peninsula designated a UNESCO Global Geopark, and they've moved on to the next step. So that group is called the Niagara Peninsula Aspiring Global Geopark, or also known as NPAG, NPAGG. You can easily look that up on Facebook, where you'll find more information and links to more information. As part of the certification process, the body known as the Canadian Geopark Network, or CGN, vets the initial submission, then works with NPAG to submit a revised final submission, and that submission is planned for the fall of 2022. Part of the vetting process includes a visit by CGN inspectors to verify the key components of the submission. And as Mayor Easton shared with us earlier on, this visit took place in various parts of the Niagara Peninsula from June 27th to June 30th of 2022. And particularly at Balls Falls on June 27th, I attended as a member of NPAG's Outreach Committee, along with Mayor Easton and Tourism Coordinator Brittany Basilewski. Before the group took the inspectors for a walk down to the lower falls, we gathered in the conference room of the NPCA building. And Mayor Easton spoke very well and highlighted a number of key takeaways for the CGN inspectors. And particularly what stood out for me is the importance of how this initiative will provide educational opportunities about the history of the beautiful lands we live in. And of course, that would include what Indigenous peoples have been doing here for thousands of years, meeting, trading, sharing stories, harvesting food, and establishing strong family and cultural ties. Brittany Basilewski, our tourism coordinator, did extremely well, speaking with her usual infectious enthusiasm and sharing some of her professional and experiential knowledge about all that we have here in the Niagara Peninsula to treasure. And of course, the economic opportunities, and of course, the importance of celebrating and protecting what we have. The key takeaway for you from this is that Lincoln was very well represented between our tourism coordinator and Mayor Easton. We then enjoyed a presentation from Dr. Carolyn Isles, and she's a professor in the School of Interdisciplinary Science and the School of Geography and Earth Sciences at McMaster University. Carolyn overviewed in some fascinating detail the geological uniqueness of Niagara, and of course, its international significance. And she talked about the Paleozoic, glacial, and post-glacial periods, and talked about the Fonthill Kame and the Short Hills. She spoke about geology's relationship with the economy. She shared with us some interesting research and educational initiatives that are in the queue. And she spoke about the work being done toward establishing geo-trails online, whereby people can have an interactive online experience about the location and history of all of the beautiful trails we have in the Niagara Peninsula. So the next step following this exciting visit is that a recommendation will be made by the CGN to UNESCO. And then a final decision will be made in the spring of 2023. Again, I'll continue to update you, and please feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions. And if I don't have the answer, I'll be happy to find the information for you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Njima. That was, Dr. Isles' presentation was really quite an eye-opener. I don't think I've never been party to a geological lecture of that type, and I think it would benefit everyone. We are supposed to be getting the slides for that, so I'm hoping that that will happen soon. Maybe Madam Clerk, you could look into that for us. Thank you very much, Councillor. I don't see any other speakers, but I do want to say that the report that Councillor Njima just gave is really just one of many that come from council in a given period of time. There's significant and expansive political influence that is exercised by all members of council through their external committees. And I believe that the public appreciate it very much when we report on these things so that they know about the variety of work and skills that are being done by everyone around this table. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor McPherson. The council meeting on July the 11th, 2022 be adjourned at 20:04 hours. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
And the vote is now open. Councillor Njima, are you in favor or opposed?
I'm in favor, thank you.
And thank you, and that vote is closed, and that carries. Thank you very much.
The motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening. Thanks, staff.